what has happened last night, the attacks on the bridges in Iran. It's at least 4 bridges were confirmed that were hit by these missiles, and the one of the most important ones was between Bandar Abbas and Shiraz. Shiraz is another province. Bandar Abbas is located in the west, in the southern part of Iran. Shiraz is to the southwest of Iran. And here is we have a footage of that. Here is the footage. And you see the damage. It's just so huge. Look at what has happened. And it's one of the main key bridges in Iran. And here is the other bridges. As you see here, we have various photos and footage coming out of Iran. And as you see, the war is getting somehow curled to the infrastructure right now. And Iran has responded. Yesterday, we had some reports that the bridge between Saudi Arabia and Bahrain was targeted, but I haven't seen any footage, any photo of that. And basically, the main attacks, looking at the targets, Iranian targets, they're attacking, the military facilities, radars, missile, depots, and all of these sort of military equipment in GCC countries, Carl. But one of them today was confirmed that Iran, Kuwait was, the Ministry of Energy in Kuwait reported that one of their desalination plants and power plants were hit in Kuwait. This is the situation. It seems that they're getting closer and closer to hit these infrastructures, which are so important right now in the region when it comes to the survival. And if they go forward and to hit these power plants and then desalination plants, that's going to be a huge problem for the whole region. Not that much for Iran when it comes to this desalination plants, but when it comes to the energy plants, that's important for Iran as well, because the southern part of Iran and the southwest of Iran is experiencing that sort of heat, and the temperature is high in those regions. Go ahead, Colonel. How do you see the situation right now?
I think we're in the same boat we've been in all along. I think it's deepening, if that's the right metaphor. It's going to sink, in other words. And I think the thing that Larry's going to appear in here later on, the LaRouche affair, had a really good encapsulation of that in the email they sent to me. Are we ready for what we're going to do? Because what we're going to do, if we keep on this track, and I don't care how accurate our bombs are against bridges and so forth, it almost looks like General Kane's trying to demonstrate that the Air Force can actually hit its targets with great precision. No one doubts that, but so can Iran. And if they move on to what I call economic targets in the region, then as this thing was predicting from the LaRouche group, we're going to be in really deep kimchi with regard to the global economy. And it's going to be every category of that economy that's impacted by what they will do in that region if they start striking those kinds of targets. And frankly, I think there's no reason why, in a military sense, in a strategic sense, they shouldn't go ahead and do that. At the same time, I've got to say that I think the approach of the United States right now, it's been this way all along. It's been this way ever since we negotiated an MOU that was against us, totally against us, and then got out of it by delaying it until after the funeral in terms of completing it or going further with it. We've been losing ever since then. If we go on and we force the Iranians into the major decision to leave the NPT, build a nuclear weapon, or reveal the nuclear weapon they already have, or anything like that, or even as dramatic, I think even more serious for the globe, they go after this other tier of targets, which will truly be globally destabilizing, we won't just have lost, the world will have lost. And that's what we're courting right now. That's what we're tempting the Iranians to do, I think.
Laurie, join in. Last time we talked, it was last night, but we didn't have that much of information about
Yeah.
the targets. Right now, it seems that they're getting serious, and Iran fully understands that.
Baidu. Baidu. That's,
Beidou.
oh, come on. Okay. Beidou.
Mhm.
That's the difference.
I knew what he meant.
Yeah. So we go back to the 12-day war. And this is all this information is courtesy of Kevin Walmsley of Inside China Business, but Kevin does an outstanding job. I had no idea that this was the case. And the Iranians were relying upon GPS for targeting their missiles during the 12-day war. And lo and behold, it looks out because that GPS system's under U.S. control. The U.S. has a back door into it so that they can spoof geographic locations. So you can, program your missile to hit, at the corner of walk and don't walk. Then instead, it sends it outside of town. And that's why the Iranians had trouble with accuracy during the 12-day war. They, the Chinese, though, I guess this goes back to 1993, and it's again another example of the law of unintended consequences. The United States stopped. CIA claimed that this one Chinese ship was carrying some, chemical weapons or something. And the United States basically shut off the GPS so the Chinese vessel couldn't move. And ultimately it was resolved. Turned out the CIA was wrong. Oh, shocker. That never happened. And the Chinese went, we need to have an alternative system. And they said about constructing Beidou. And it is actually better than GPS. They're on like their third generation. They've got more satellites. And Iran started using Beidou on February 28th, which is why their strikes have been so precise. And the United States has had one of those, oh shit moments that, they no longer could interfere and manipulate. Now, Iran's tactical objectives are much easier to achieve than the U.S. tactical objectives. The U.S. tactical objectives are to degrade Iran's ability to launch drones and missiles at ships. Well, I imagine between the Bandar Lechem, I think it is, which is north of Qasem Island, all the way down to Sirik. That's about 200 miles. I imagine there's at least 1,000 launch sites along that coastline. So the task of the United States trying to take out all of those is difficult. They blew up these bridges in order to try to disrupt logistic support to the coastal areas. And that may have an effect. But all Iran has to do is blow the hell out of 9 bases in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in UAE, and the 2 Air Force bases in Jordan. And they are doing exactly that. They're hitting them with precision. They're taking out warehouses. They're taking out storage sites. I saw one news flash that the Triton drone, which is a $250 million drone, you can imagine that, was based in Jordan, and they pulled it back to like Cyprus or Italy, the U.S. Air base there. So all Iran has to do is continue to destroy these U.S. bases, 9 of them actually, destroy those. Then all of a sudden, the United States no longer has a presence in the Middle East. They have to go to Israel. And look at what Israel tried to do the other day. The Minister of Transportation said, get your KC-135s out of here. Why? Because it makes them a big fat target. Now, it was Bibi Netanyahu reversed that on Wednesday. But the fact that there was someone in the Israeli government saying, get the KC-135s out of here, and where this is headed is the United States is going to be forced to retreat to bases inside Israel, and at that point, Iran will begin taking those out. And I believe we're going to see targeting inside Israel at some point if this continues on this trajectory. That will include the destruction of the Dimona nuclear facility. So that's where we're headed.
And what a rich target that would make ultimately for Iran's announcement of having a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, well,
U.S. and Israel, one fell swoop.
You know, the I forget who it was in the legislature but announced was 2 weeks ago. Said, look, if the United States attacks us, so now they have attacked them, we're going to shut down the Bab el-Mandab Strait. We're going to review our nuclear doctrine. Well, when your current doctrine is don't build anything, a review means we're going to build something, and then they were going to withdraw from the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So, yeah, this is if the United States' goal in this was to keep Iran from getting a nuke, they've done everything to inspire them to get one.
Bingo.
Carol, looking at the way Iran is fighting strategically, do you think that Larry just mentioned the way that it could work out for Iran? But from your point of view, when you look at Israel is doing is rebuilding some sort of military bases in the southern part of Lebanon. There was some reports just moments ago. We've learned that they're in the southern part of Lebanon in town in the town of Khiam. They're saying that they have destroyed the whole town and they're constructing a military base there. This is the agenda on the part of Israel. But when it comes to the middle, basically they're dividing two forces. One of them is Israel in the southern part of Lebanon and the United States in the Middle East fighting Iran. How do you see the strategy of Iranians as time goes by? They're mostly focused on the military bases and and radars in the region. But how much of their how much of their concern comes from the case of Lebanon? How do you see the case of Lebanon in their calculation?
I think basically what's happening on the side of Israel and the United States is essentially tactical. I think what's happening on the side of Iran is essentially fundamentally strategic. And I go back to that headline in Haaretz that said all Iran had to do to not lose or to win was to not lose. And all the United States and Bibi had to do is to win spectacularly. What we know, and we had it thrown into our face with this MOU, particularly paragraph 5, when you look at what we surrendered there, you understand how desperate we were and why we canceled any further negotiations, because that was turning everything over that was fundamental to Iran's strategy, at least half of it, because I think it's all about the nuclear program on the one hand, it's 50%, the other, it's about the Strait of Hormuz. And as Larry has said now, maybe the Red Sea too. Those are strategic advantages for Iran that we can do nothing about tactically. I don't care how many bombs we drop. I don't care how resolute we are and how accurate we are. We can't disturb those strategic realities for Iran. Not unless we're willing to put 2 or 3 million troops on the ground, scour the country from one end to the other, lose 200,000 or 300,000 of those troops, spend $2 or $3 trillion and spend 10 years and have it look like Afghanistan at the end, or maybe slightly better. That's the only way we can do that. We are not equipped to do that. We're not capable of doing that. So all Iran has got to do is hold out. That's all they have to do. And these machinations in Lebanon or in Syria or inviting Turkey down or whatever, they're irrelevant to the advantage that Iran has. And I haven't even mentioned Russia and China, primarily the latter, being on their side and having demonstrated that conclusively now.
Yeah, let me add to that because even though China and Pakistan just came out and calling upon the return to negotiations, which this confirms what Pepe Escobar and I have been reporting, that the Pacs have been playing this major role in trying to get the negotiations going or keeping it alive, but they're doing it at the behest of China. On the one hand, China, economically is getting hurt a little bit by what's going on in this with the shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz. On the other hand, what we are witnessing with the United States and the munitions that it's firing. So I had some I always credit Ambrose Bierce. He said that war was God's way of teaching Americans geography. Well, I'll just add to that man, it teaches you a lot of other things about oil, about U.S. missile supplies. And so I kept hearing that, they're launching HIMARS. Well, they don't launch HIMARS. A HIMARS is a launcher. So what is the HIMARS launching? Well, it has 3 types of missiles it can launch. One of them is a guided missile multiple launcher, which travels about 20 miles. So forget that. They're not using that. Then they have the ATACMS. But the problem with the ATACMS is they've got a limited range too of about 180 miles. So they're left with this thing called the precision strike missile. Travels 300 miles, robust, except Lockheed Martin has only made 56 of them. So, if they're firing 8 a day, they use those up in a week. So that leaves us with the Tomahawk. Well, we're running out of those. Same with the JASSM. The Joint Air Surface Strike Missile, I think is what it's called. Again, it's a cruise missile fired from one of the aircraft. And the same with HARMS, the HARM missile. So if you look at it from China's standpoint, they're going, every day the United States is sending a missile into an Iranian position, blowing up some sand in the desert. That's one less missile the United States has to fire at us. And I think the Chinese are actually secretly more than happy to have the United States punching itself to the point of exhaustion, trying to defeat Iran. And that's one of the other dynamics that's at play here.
Old Confucian saying, when your enemy is defeating himself, leave him alone.
Yeah.
Or you could add to that Chinese communism with capitalistic characteristics, add a little when you can.
Colonel, we've learned that the United States is sending more F-16s to the region, to the Middle East. And General Keane had an interview hours ago on Fox News. He says that what the United States is doing is Operation Freedom, the same operation that they tried to use before. And the argument, here is the argument on his part.
We're executing Project Freedom. Remember, that was the plan to open the Straits of Hormuz back on May the 4th. It was a plan that at that time to be about 2 weeks in length. It was a very comprehensive plan, and we're executing it. And we're not naming it, but that's the fact. And that plan is, 1, to secure the straits, to clear the straits, and then also to protect shipping. And what you're seeing is 1, the focus to take down all the means for them to interfere with shipping, missiles, drones, fast boats, and then the things that help and enable it, command and control, sensors, radars, and the logistical infrastructure support for it. And then we're also hitting Iran's ability to retaliate against the Gulf states, U.S. bases, or Israel if they choose to do that as well. And that's ballistic missiles, launch systems, and also drone inventory and storage sites. Isolating the Straits of Hormuz was always part of the plan. So that's why you see bridges being destroyed, because we don't want them to come in and be able to reinforce logistically and begin to recover the capabilities that we're taking away from them. So nothing different about this. We just never saw Project Freedom being executed fully. Remember, it got stopped in the 36th hour, something outrageous by Saudi Arabia, if you recall, who would not permit us to fly out of their air base and not permit us to use their airspace, and also put pressure on us to stop the operation. So this takes some time to unfold to truly get it right. And hopefully this time we'll be able to complete it and get it right. And then here's what we got to remember. For Iran, the Straits of Hormuz is a strategic asset. No matter what happens here, they will continue to want to take it back from us because it's number one. They don't have a nuclear power capability. They're not even close to developing a weapon now. This is their number one strategic asset. It gives them leverage over the Gulf states in the region, and they truly want to have an element of control here. And they are willing to fight us for it, and we have got to take it away from them and prevent them from ever getting it back under their control again.
Yeah. Let's finish this operation. The last. Carl, he mentioned a lot of points when it comes
Didn't
to
he? He covered he covered the boardwalk, everything. He wanted to throw it all out there, get all that garbage out there on the table, all that garbage that we've created and given Iran the linchpin in dealing with. But the biggest mistake he's making, I think, is he doesn't understand the geography we're dealing with. He doesn't understand the people we're dealing with. He doesn't understand the resilience and the resoluteness of the people we're dealing with. He thinks we're dealing with, oh, wow, whom have we defeated in the last 50 years? Think about that for a minute. The last war we actually had that was successful was the first Gulf War, and it was the only one since 1945. So we're looking at a reputation for defeat, not a reputation for victory. And that man just kind of evinced the attitude and the words that accompany that kind of stance, in my view. We are on the back foot. We're going to be on the back foot. He didn't even talk about the Red Sea. He didn't even talk about what's happening there, what might happen there. He didn't talk about how we're losing all of our allies in the region and how we aren't going to get them back. And he didn't talk about what Larry was referring to with regard to the, from what I'm hearing, China should be cheering in the streets because we are using up critical munitions at a rate that is irreplaceable in any kind of time frame that might be justified.
Correct.
So we're just deepening our peril. And this general is there saying, let's deepen it a little bit further because just another bomb, just another strike, just another missile taken out. By the way, I wonder how many missiles they have left. I wonder how many missiles they can still build underground. I wonder how many times we're going to have to see those missiles operate before we understand what they have and what they can do. And I wonder when they're going to start letting those missiles operate on targets like Ras Tanura and maybe 12% of the oil coming out of the Gulf region and other things associated with it. And I wonder when we're going to talk about the things that Trump should have talked about in his speech last night, but didn't, like the fact we're not going to have any diesel. We don't have fertilizer. Farmers aren't planting their crops. I mean, this is bad stuff, and we're just ignoring it. And that general's totally ignoring it, as if he doesn't have any mind that goes beyond F-16s dropping bombs.
Yeah, he's so myopic, or there's a there's a phenomena like when I'm teaching firearms and defensive pistol. If someone gets into a gun battle, they get what's called tunnel vision. They get so focused upon what's in front of them, what they're shooting at, that they lose perspective about what's going on around them. And that's exactly what you're seeing with General Keane and with the advisors around Trump, Stephen Miller and others. They're so obsessed with thinking that they can degrade Iran's ability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And yet they're not taking time to say, okay, how many Tomahawk missiles do we actually have? I think right now the total inventory globally is 2,500. And people say, well, hell, you just said there's only 1,000 targets there. So if we use one of those in each of those targets, voila. Except what we forget is that INDOPACOM, the the U.S. commander for the Pacific, used to be called PACOM, Pacific Command. They've got a requirement for a certain number of Tomahawk missiles for their missions to accomplish, as well as same thing for the JASSMs. EUCOM, European Command, same thing. So when you spread out, allocate what should be allocated to each of those commands, all of a sudden you realize we're at beyond the critical threshold. In other words, once we start using those, and we can't replace them for a combination of reasons, that the Chinese control the rare earth minerals that are needed for the magnets that go into the precision guidance systems in each of these missiles, that we're right now, it's like we've cut our wrists and we're bleeding out and we don't realize it, or we're not paying attention to it. And then they forget the depth that the Iranians have. Now, Keen was correct with it. He said, yeah, the surface drones, the underwater drones, the coastal defense missiles, the short-range ballistic missiles, the fast boats, all of those. And he forgot to mention mines. At some point, Iran can say, screw it. We are going to mine the Omani Strait. And they say, we may mine the entire damn thing. So nobody's going to get out until our demands are met. And and to reinforce Colonel Wilkerson's point about the shortages, the oil that comes out of the Persian Gulf is what's known as sour crude. It's primarily sour crude, and that means it's got a high sulfur content, and that oil is used in the refineries out there that are going to produce diesel and aviation fuel need that particular kind of oil. And so it's both a refinery issue and a supply of oil issue. But the bottom line is we've got a global shortage of diesel and aviation fuel right now. And that shortage is only going to get worse with each passing week. And until that Strait of Hormuz is open, and let's say once you get it open and oil flowing back like before, you're looking at least of 2 months, maybe 3 months before you get back to a level where they can actually start replacing the supply. So what I'm saying is right now, so we're here in July, we're almost coming towards the end of July. So you got August, September, October. It's not, if things got fixed today, we would not even have any hope of getting back to normal until November. That is one of the big problems that they're ignoring.
And I think that's one reason that they've seemed to have sped things up, because they're beginning to realize that some of this background is there. And some of it is really, really inimical, especially to their interest of being reelected in November.
Yeah.